Let's talk about credit for just a moment. One of the questions that I get asked a lot by home buyers is, what credit score do I need to qualify for a mortgage? And there's no set answer for that because different loan programs are going to have different credit score requirements, and different companies are going to have different credit score requirements. The interesting fact is that VA and FHA, those mortgage products, do not have a minimum credit score requirement. But most banks, most mortgage companies that do those type of loans have what we call a credit overlay, where they will say, for us to do this loan through FHA or VA, you must have a minimum credit score of X. Usually that's going to be around 600 to 620. You will find some lenders who will go down to 560, 580, but they're going to have real stringent guidelines as far as your debt to income and things like that. So there's not just a set answer for what credit score do I need, but I typically tell people you're probably going to need at least a 600 credit score in order to qualify, and to get the very best rates out there, you want to be in the high 700s to 800. How can I improve my credit score before applying for a home loan? Improving your credit score is not like a magic formula that we can give to you. The biggest thing I can tell you is to pay your bills on time. That's going to be the number one thing. The second thing would be reduce your credit card balances. If you've gotten into a bad habit of charging up your credit cards, you need to start paying those down. One of the factors that does affect your credit score is the amount of money you owe on credit cards versus the total available credit that you have. So for instance, if you have $1,000 credit card, if you only owe $200 to $300 on it, that's okay. They're not going to really hold that against you. But when you get up to $500, $600, $700 balance on a $1,000 credit card, that's when the credit bureaus ding you for that. So work on getting your credit card balances down. The other thing I would tell you to do is to monitor your credit report. If you go to freecreditreport.com, that is a website set up by the government that allows you to check your credit once a year. You're not going to get all three of the credit bureaus. I would probably pick Equifax if you live here in East Tennessee, because that is the primary bureau here in East Tennessee. But check your credit report at least every 6 months to a year. Make sure that the information is accurate on there. If you have a loan that you have been paying faithfully on and it's not reporting to the credit bureau, or it's not updating to the credit bureau, I would call them and find out why. Because you want the information on there to be as accurate as possible. You don't want to go apply for a mortgage and then find out that your car loan is reporting 2 months late, or you've got a medical collection that got thrown on there that you had no idea about. So monitor your credit report. Those are probably the biggest three things you can do to try and get your credit score to improve. How does my credit history and credit report impact my ability to secure a mortgage? We used to joke that back in the subprime lending days, if you had a pulse and had never really paid anybody, you could still get 100% financing on a house. So now they have definitely changed that. And people do look at your credit a lot harsher than they used to. So if your credit history reflects the fact that you continuously make late payments, you charge off accounts, you owe too much money to people, you're probably not going to get qualified for a mortgage. They're going to look at your credit history. And if you're not paying people on time, they're not going to assume that you're going to make your house payment on time either. So if you have absolutely no credit, there are ways to help build a credit score for you based on things like your electric bill, water bills, things like that. So that would be a conversation you would need to have with a lender if you have absolutely no credit whatsoever. But if you do have credit issues, talk to the lender. They can usually give you some ideas to help you get on track and give you a time frame that your credit score would be high enough that you would be able to buy. Can I qualify for a mortgage with a less than perfect credit history? Absolutely you can. And I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions that people have, is that they have to have like a 740 credit score above to be able to buy a house. Great, you're going to get a really good rate if your credit score is that high, but you absolutely do not have to have a 740 in order to purchase a home. Like I said just a few minutes ago, you could have a 600, a 620, and still be able to get in. So that's definitely less than perfect credit when you're there. I'm just going to be honest with you, if you're like 550 or below, you're not going to qualify to buy a home right now. If your score is in the 500s or below, that typically means you have a consistent pattern of not paying people on time. So you'll need to get in touch with either a loan officer or maybe a financial coach who can sit down with you and help you get on the path to building your credit, start getting your bills paid, things like that. How long does negative information such as late payments or bankruptcy affect my credit worthiness? I know people who went through a bankruptcy and they thought they could never have any kind of credit again because they had had this bankruptcy. And so it had been 5, 6, 7 years, but because they never reestablished credit, that bankruptcy was the most recent information, so it still pulled their credit score down. Typically, the rule of thumb is that a bankruptcy is going to prevent you from being able to buy a house for at least 2 to 3 years. But a lot of times you're going to be able to purchase a vehicle at a slightly higher interest rate. You may be able to get a secured credit card, something like that. So the key to removing that negative information or having it to not impact your credit score as badly is to start getting good information put on your credit report as quickly as you can after you have an event like a bankruptcy. If you file bankruptcy and then you get married, ask to be put as an authorized user on your spouse's credit cards because that will help you to build up your credit score as well. So there's no pat answer. Bankruptcies, foreclosures can stay on your credit report for 7 to 10 years, but that doesn't mean that they're negatively affecting your credit score for that entire time. If you're thinking about buying a home, but you're not sure what your credit looks like, the first thing I would do is go to that website that I gave you, pull your credit, look at it. Now, your lender is not going to be able to use that credit report because it doesn't generate a score for you. It just tells you what's on there. But talk to a lender because they are the first step in buying a home. That loan officer will sit down with you, show you what's on your credit report, and tell you what you're going to have to do in order to qualify so that you can buy a home. If you need a recommendation to a great lender, let me know. I've got a few that I work with.